Hello everyone and welcome back to Brown Coat Reviews. I'm your host Laura. Now here at Brown Coat Reviews we do comic book reviews, we go behind the scenes, we show some cool collections, and we have everyone's favorite show, Married with Comics. Now normally I'll sit here, you recognize the background by now, and I'll talk about a different comic title that I've read, enjoyed, or loathed. But I wanted to do a slightly different video for you today. So as you've seen in our different pull list videos, the number of titles that we purchase, but then I will constantly say, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of reading, or I can't wait to read that, or it's on the to be read pile, is a little ridiculous. The ones that I'm actively reading, it genuinely feels like I have about 10 to 15 different titles going on at one time. So instead of just talking about, well, I'm reading this and I'm reading that, I wanted to give you a glimpse of the titles that I've cut from my reading list and give you an idea of why. So there are some series, I will definitely grab issue number 1, check it out. If I like it well enough, continue on to issue number 2, maybe issue number 3. And by issue number 3, I'm like, I need to kind of decide, am I sticking with it? Am I going to cut this series and just grab the trade later on? Or did this series just not even warrant going on to the second issue? So the first issue that is on my chopping block, which I know is a little controversial, is Heroes Reborn. I am sad to say it because I love this Ant Germ cover. It is absolutely gorgeous and I liked the idea of this story and there is a ton of hype around it. But sadly, I finished issue number 1. Now, this is an alternative universe story where one major event did not take place, and suddenly all the MCU characters have changed as a result. There are no Avengers. Instead, we have a different squadron that is kind of protecting the world. Here's my challenge with this story, is that we have seen alternative universes done incredibly well, and we've seen them kind of flop. Future State, just saying. We've also seen sometimes where the alternative universe starts off incredibly well and then it just gets so overdone that after a while no one wants to read it anymore. There's so many spin-off series that they do. So I was like, okay, well let's give it a chance. I started this series and it reminded me of, gosh, it felt like 5 or 6 other series that either I had watched the animated movie of or I had read the story. It was another repeat of what we've all seen a million times before. Get to the end of the story and I felt like I could tell you already, kind of like a Rocky movie. I can tell you all the upcoming twists, what's going to happen in the end, and I didn't need to finish the series. Now, it's possible that, yes, I've cut this from my list, that someone could change my mind. I could hear down the road that this series took an amazing twist and now everyone loves it and it is like the best series ever. And then I will eat my words and I'll go grab the trade. But right now, no. There wasn't enough character development for me to want to continue. I liked seeing Blade. He's kind of like the main voice that's sort of guiding us through this alternative universe. Really cool. But overall, it just wasn't there for me. So, bye-bye Heroes Reborn. So the next one on the chopping block is Suicide Squad. Now, I read the 2020 series. It was good. Wanted to check out the 2021 series, especially because of the upcoming movie. And it's missing something. Now, as you know, Suicide Squad is kind of meant to be like the island of misfit toys. Just sort of all these crazy characters that are thrown together, stir them up a little bit, throw in some humor, lots of bloodshed, and you have Suicide Squad. So Suicide Squad to me should be just this really, really fun roller coaster ride. It should be a guilty pleasure. And the problem that I had with this one would be the characters. Now, Peacemaker is just meant to be kind of a jerk. He's two-dimensional, he's rigid, he will do anything in the name of peace. Like, okay, now, if I'm writing the series and you give me a character that is just always kind of on the nose, like Captain America. To counter Captain America, you have to give him Iron Man. You gotta throw them in the same room, and you need to have that Tony Stark banter back and forth where Tony just does either something snarky, something funny, or tries to get Captain America's goat. That's what you need when you have a character like Peacemaker. The problem is, they do technically have that character in the Suicide Squad. It's Harley Quinn. But I guess they were feeling that Harley Quinn is kind of overdone. So they put in a different character that is supposed to be the comedic foil for Peacemaker. The problem is, instead of being funny, she's just really annoying. She talks a lot, and she doesn't really say funny things, and instead it just feels like a filler character. And the other side characters, I'm like, okay, they're not bad, but as you know, in Suicide Squad, they got the bomb in the neck, so the number of members of the Suicide Squad that make it through kind of a run of Suicide Squad, someone always dies. So it always feels like you never get a chance to really get to know the characters, because before you know it, they're getting blown up. So there was just something really, really missing. And then we finally get to this issue, which is kind of beginning the event within the series. And it was action-adventure, nothing wrong with that. But by the end, there's this turn of events and an introduction of a new character, and I didn't care. I was just like, okay, congrats, you've joined the fray. And I knew as soon as there was nothing within any of these characters for me to try and root for, then I was done. So, bye-bye Suicide Squad. Harley Quinn I have already talked about in my other video, which I've got linked down in the subscription box if you have not watched it already. This was just a vast disappointment for me, especially when you're talking about the character of Harley Quinn and kind of where she's progressed. Especially when you look back at the Joker War. I mean, she is amazing in the Joker War. And then you get to this, where she's unable to handle anything again. She's pining for Mr. J, and she's no longer a scary threat. Instead, she's cute. I'm like, really? She's Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is supposed to be capable and intimidating and scary all on her own. She's not just adorable, and she's not just arm candy for Mr. J. There's a reason that the Joker picked her, and she has capabilities that everyone is afraid of, or should be afraid of. And this series doesn't make me afraid of any of it. I don't feel intimidated by her, and I don't even care. Like Harley Quinn Rebirth, she's fun. I can't stop giggling and laughing, and they balance the violent tendencies with the funny bantering. And it's a cute play, and they didn't achieve it in that series, so I'm done. Next one on the chopping block is my free comic book day issue. It's an Aftershock comic called Patience, Conviction, and Revenge. Sad to say, this one, I don't know, I almost didn't finish this one. At first I thought I was being way too harsh, and then I kept reading, and then I realized that no, I'm not being too harsh, I just really don't like this comic. So, two problems that I have with it. Number one is our main character. Now, perfect example. You have Han Solo and Constantine. Both of them are those kind of tongue-in-cheek characters that when Han Solo says he handled it, something was broken in the process. Or he may make a snide, snarky comment, and it's funny as all get out. Constantine will sit there and insult you to your face, call you love, light up a cigarette, and it's funny as all get out. You sometimes want to deck him, but at the same time, you're secretly rooting for him. You enjoy those characters, you root for them. The problem that I had was that the main character in this story, they tried that kind of tongue-in-cheek thing where he's describing the conversation that he had with someone, where the art is then depicting that the conversation involved, whether it's blackmail or beating someone up, whatever actually took place. And instead of it being this kind of clever insider view of this character, it was just like, okay, so he talks out of both sides of his mouth. All right. And even like the very first page, he mentions that he's just a great storyteller and he likes to improve the truth. I'm like, okay. But the whole story is him improving the truth. And it gets old. Because as a narrator, eventually you want either to care about the character or you need someone on the other end of the story, like the Mulder and Scully. You need someone to kind of ground the character and give you something more, that you're kind of rooting for that banter, that back and forth. Instead of coming up with our Scully, they decided to put some comedic relief into the story, even though they were trying to make the main character funny. Albeit. The main character is an inventor and he builds robots. It's a post-apocalyptic world and they are out in the desert. So one of the robots is supposed to be our funny guy. The problem is he's not funny. And it's almost like this robot, it's not even like C-3PO where he's complaining and it's funny. He's complaining, he's trying to be funny, and none of it works. The one that just really grated me the wrong way. So he builds all these robots and he decides to cross the desert to find civilization and do something great. They come across some desert dwellers, and the desert dwellers are almost like hippies, and they kind of force this caravan of robots and our main character to take a break and share a meal with them. Whatever. So every single time that the desert dwellers talk about the desert that, is they live in, they, instead of calling it the Mojave Desert, they call it the Mojave Desert. And they made a very specific point the first time that the characters did that, to have the robot be like, did you hear that? And then you hear it said again, Mojave. And the robot's like, wait a second. Do they not realize that they're mispronouncing this? I'm like, oh, okay. You want to make sure that when you're reading this story and you're reading the word Mojave, that you're technically mispronouncing it in your own mind. Cool. So I made sure every single time I heard those characters say Mojave, I was reading a Mojave. The problem was every single time they said Mojave, the robot then responds, don't you hear that? Doesn't someone hear that there's a silent J? Every time. And it felt like they made that joke like 10 to 15 times. I'm sure it was probably only 6. It's just, it wasn't funny the first time. It wasn't even important to the storyline the first time. It just was annoying. It was genuinely annoying. And after a while, I'm like, okay, robot, we get it. Smack! Knock it off. So all the different things that they kind of did to build and try and make this something that I was really going to enjoy, and it failed appallingly. So I did finally finish it. I did try and give it a chance, but no, I'm done. So the last one that I'm going to show you is an issue that is technically almost on the chopping block. And that title is The Next Batman, Second Son. I'm giving it one more issue. If it doesn't improve by then, I'm done. Now, I loved the Future State Next Batman series. Maybe I was the only one who did actually like it, but it was funny, enjoyable. I loved the family story and the dynamic of all the different family members that sort of fit a very different and sometimes very conflicting roles in this war with the masks. And I really liked it, and the more I kind of delved into it, the more I really enjoyed it. So when I found out that after Future State was over, they were going to do The Next Batman, Second Son, I was so excited, and I couldn't wait for the series to drop. And now it has. Here's my challenge with it. As I've described, Lisa, there was always kind of that big family element that makes the next Batman the next Batman. The problem that I'm running into now is that there's so much family drama that in some ways I'm like, can we find out why there's so much angst and drama, and less just everyone's mad at each other and everyone's upset. Like, give me more. Give me something to kind of grab a hold of. There are, like I said, little glimmering moments. It's technically Jace Fox that he's the reason that I keep reading it, who is the next Batman. And the rest, I'm like, it's got to get to a specific point to then build up to the future state, because this is a prequel. It's not answering some of the questions that I thought it should be. It's not showing some of those action scenes that I thought it would. It's not there yet. It still has potential. And I think that's the problem that I'm having with it, is that you have so much history in the Batman universe that you are combining into all these characters, and they're kind of blowing it for me. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting on this one. We'll see. My big question for you all: what titles hit your chopping block? Which ones did you read one issue of or multiple issues of and then decide, nope, I'm done? Were any of them my titles? I'm a little curious. And let me know, of course, if you completely disagree with me. Were any of these titles ones that you absolutely loved and you cannot wait for the next issue to drop? I'd love to hear from you all. And as always, this is Laura from Brown Coat Reviews, and I will be talking to you all again very soon. Have a great day.